welcome to an episode of the Sacred Femme Alchemy podcast. It has been a hot minute since I have recorded one, a podcast episode, and two, an actual video podcast episode. And so it just feels so good. I just got off a call with some of my sisters in a training that I was doing, and it just lit me up so much. And I've been feeling the pull to really want to share what's going on in my life because it's been a while. And I feel, well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to all of the people in my community who have been here with me from the beginning since 2022. It's not even that long, just 3 years. But I feel like I've gone through so many different iterations and different evolutions and different chapters of my journey of sharing this work, of really truly doubling down and dialing in on wanting to be in the spiritual coaching industry. And it's just dovetailed from so many different chapters of inner child healing to relationship coaching to divine feminine work to feminine spirituality to back to relationships and, focusing on somatic practices like EFT tapping and my journey with Tantra yoga or traditional tantric yoga and traditional tantric practices, and then Kundalini yoga. And it was so funny because so much has transpired. And if you are in my inner circle, you know what was happening behind the scenes. And if you're not, this is just going to be me lifting the veil to what's been going on. And I feel like there's just so much I want to say, but what I really just want to dial into for this specific episode is more of an update, And I guess all the different spiritual lessons that I'm learning, and really just the context behind the scenes of where I'm going. And it just feels so freeing, and it feels so fucking liberating of, well, first of all, I just want to take a breath. So deep breath in. You should do this with me. So 2 more times. Deep breath in. I'm just saying it out. Maybe you want to shake your shoulders. Last time. So just placing one hand on your right hand on your heart, your left hand on your womb. Coming back to your body. And just grounding any energies that feel a little bit scattered. Coming back to your center. Okay. I just felt like I really needed to ground myself because I had just so much energy. I just came off a call and it really juiced me up. Shakti was activated. She was inspired. And it's like, I just need to center myself. I need to ground myself. And I want to show up and be present and just share what has been going on. Oh my goodness, I don't even know where to begin. But in the last couple of years, I would say my journey into the divine feminine work has really been, I want to say, inspired. So the initiation was relationships. The initiation was getting sober, really opening the path of the spiritual journey and what it would look like. And, at this point, what's true and real for me is connecting to Shakti, Kundalini, and that dormant energy that lives within each of us that presents our highest potential, that shows us aspects of us that are true. So when you talk to people or when you hear the term like Kundalini awakening, that's what it is. It's awakening that dormant energy that lives inside of you that connects you to the truest and rawest aspects of yourself, so your true nature. And, you know, deciding to get sober, deciding to leave a really abusive, like toxic relationship when I was in my early 20s really paved the path for me. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I've had the beautiful opportunity to do and create sacred space for myself to really dive into feminine rituals, tantric feminine arts, and explore my relationship of what actually took me on the path of the tantric feminine arts. And it was truly, I think, the beginning of it was when I left my relationship with someone that became physically abusive to me. And I was in my early 20s and I was living in New York at the time. And I would say my relationship to spirituality was kind of mired in concepts that were just very heady. It was more of the masculine side of spirituality, of meditation, really leaning into psychology, really leaning into therapy, talk therapy, of, you know, why I am the way I am, childhood stuff. And, you know, ultimately that does provide more context and that does create better understanding of myself. But the key that was really missing was the embodiment piece. And so, you know, when I think of relationships, I think of, and I'm talking from the feminine perspective, you know, with a male partner, of when I chose to level up and be better, to want to call in a relationship that was better. And I truly believe that when a woman chooses herself, she does change the world. When a woman connects to her own energy, her own pleasure, her own sensuality, her own sexual energy, she awakens something in her that allows her to connect to her truest, strongest, just inner power. And so when I made the choice to leave this relationship, and when I felt so disconnected to people that were in my circle because they couldn't necessarily empathize or they hadn't gone through a physically abusive relationship or toxic relationship, no fault to their own, I just felt really isolated. And so I remember living in New York and deciding to join a domestic abuse or domestic violence organization that allowed women resources and community. And so that's how I found community. That's how I found sisterhood, other people who experienced the same things that I did. And so what I did was really transmute that pain, that horrible experience into how can I teach others what is a cycle of abuse so that they don't experience this. And it ended up becoming just my mission, because I think behind everything I do is I experience it. And if there's a way that I can, you know, prevent you from having to take extra steps or finding a different hack into how to do things differently, I'm going to be there and I want to show up and I want to show you different things that I've tried. And that's just something that I love doing. I think that's why I identify so much with being a teacher, and really helping you see the path for yourself and sharing tools and resources that have worked with me, that have allowed me to navigate life in a way with higher consciousness, navigate life in a way where I have grace for challenges. And so I made it my mission to want to inform other people of, these are the signs of abuse. This is the cycle of abuse. These are the red flags to look for. And I even went on this self-study of, okay, how did I get into this relationship? What was it in my life that caused me to end up here? And mind you, I didn't want to look and answer these hard questions, but I knew that was a missing piece to my spiritual journey. And I mention that now because I think sometimes, especially when we go on this path and we think we're doing so much inner work that we're not going to face any challenges, but you can't go through life expecting that, because you're on this path of doing different things that's for your development, that's for your better good, that it's going to prevent you from experiencing the ups and downs of life. And I remember when I first got sober, that was one of the promises that I thought that we got, that once I got sober, then I wouldn't have to say sorry to people multiple times. I thought it was just like a one and done thing, or that if I got sober, then I wouldn't have any issues. And I just remember, oh my gosh, like 3 months into getting sober, I ended up getting laid off. And I was like, what? I got sober? Like, I thought I'm supposed to be immune to all this like life shit. And it's so interesting because even now, when I talk to certain clients one on one, they're just like, why was it easier last month and why is it harder this month? And what you have to do is just really learn to have this cosmic dance with pain and pleasure. Because when you are no longer running away from any of your feelings, when you're no longer running away from things that scare you, from things that you're fearful of, you will really allow yourself to experience and have the bigger capacity to experience pleasure. So it's like your ability to experience pain is correlated to your ability to experience pleasure. And the more pain you can experience, the more pleasure you can experience. And you can hold both of those. You can have a bigger capacity. And so when I think about that, when I think about when I said yes to answering those really hard questions that I really didn't want to answer because I was just afraid of maybe hating myself, because I thought I was a loser, because every time someone asked me, like, how did you get into that relationship? There was always like this undertone of it was your fault. And I took that on. And I think that's why, I mean, this is just my opinion. That's why, when you talk to people that get into an abusive relationship, it's a very sensitive topic because it's not about blaming someone or what was wrong in them or what was defective in them to actually call that in. And I think for me, what made me allow myself to come to peace with it, to come to terms with it, was the fact that I finally took responsibility for understanding that I was looking for love, that I equated romantic relationship with something that I wanted to fill that hole within me. That if someone loved me, then I was worthy enough. That if someone was able to, love the parts that I didn't love about myself, then I could be holistically loved. And that stuff you can't seek outside of you. That stuff is always within. And that's what sticks, right? Because if the person leaves, then you're still left with that hole. And you'll start to wonder and you'll start to rationalize and think, okay, because they left, it really is true that I'm not good enough. And I can just get into a whole bunch of different things about that, but I don't want to dive into relationships. And I truly believe that when I learned to alchemize that pain, when I learned to see that experience of abuse was an opportunity for me to really dive into the depths and the shadows of my soul. Like that was my first foray and like dance with shadow work at all. I didn't even know that it was called shadow work. It was just like facing your challenges, facing the things that you don't like about yourself that is going to help you in the long term. And so I would say that was my first experience. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had this beautiful opportunity recently to go to Tulum and to do this beautiful training where we were asked this question of what prompted you to dive into the tantric arts? What prompted you to follow this path? And that is what I chose to share with the women that I had this experience with of, yeah, it was that relationship. And it was so interesting because that wasn't the thing that I wanted to share. And when I really look back, I realized that was the catalyst. That was the difficult experience that allowed me to recognize and realize that I want something better for myself. And to be able to understand alchemy, which is, the work of the priestess, which is the work of the wild woman. And I talk a lot about feminine archetypes of being able to look at your shadows, being able to be unafraid to meet the depths of your soul, being able to say yes, and being able to question not only societal conditioning and programming, but the things inside of you that you believe to be true. Because it's about learning to break down different paradigms. It's about learning to be that untamed, wild soul that wants to come out. And it's all related to Kundalini. It's all related to Shakti. And I feel like I'm just in this really beautiful space where I find all of it just coming together in a very deeper way. And so, that was my first initiation into following a sacred spiritual path. And now it's revealed itself into the feminine path of really worshiping Shakti, that divine feminine energy that lives inside all of us, that creative energy, that Kundalini energy, that energy of aliveness, of eros, of pleasure, of sexuality, and being able to tap into that, because that really allows us to connect to those deeper parts of ourselves that are true. And when we find that we can be true, that's when we start to liberate ourselves from old patterns. And so for me, I think, when I think about my spirituality, and I mentioned all the different things that I coached on, the last missing piece, and I love that I'm getting a thumbs up here. It's so funny. I love it when Zoom does that, but was my relationship to sexuality. And I'm someone, to Vedic astrology, I identify as Gemini, double Gemini, and I can be very heady. And, when it comes to relationships, being mentally stimulated is a huge part for me. So it really attracts me to people. I can live from up here, right? I can very much live from up here. And I thought that doing somatic practices like EFT tapping and, other things just allow me to connect more to my body. And I realized over the last couple of months that I haven't really been connected to my body until I had an opportunity to really connect and see the shortness of breath, superficial breathing, chest breathing, and not really connecting and knowing the cadence of my body, knowing how I feel, moment to moment basis. And it's a coming back to your body. And that's what embodiment practices are. It's, oh, this is what it is. And if you don't feel safe in the body, it's going to be really hard to stay in the body. And so it feels good to be in this period of my life where, like I had this opportunity to reset. I had this opportunity to develop a new relationship of what it looks like in my body. And, the call for working on my relationship to my sexuality and having this sexual awakening began in probably 2018. 2018. Yeah, 2018. And I remember I was dating someone at the time and we were intimate, and he called me out and said, "Hey, where did you go?" And that was the first time when I realized, oh, when you're disassociating, when you're intimate with someone, that probably means that you have a challenging relationship with sex. And just feeling sometimes a little coquettish when it came to sexual relationships, and feeling that I couldn't really own that part of myself, and sometimes allowing other people to take the lead because I was scared to, or I didn't know what to do, or I didn't feel safe. And how important it is to feel safe, to have the presence of someone, to really allow yourself to just drop in and feel that energy and feel your heart just blossom and open up even more. And so that was always in the back of my mind of, okay, I know I have to work on this, but I'm just going to work on other things beforehand. And that was actually the missing piece to the divine feminine spirituality that I was just on this path of. And so when I decided to have this opportunity to do this training, I realized, okay, I want to have kids. And I want to have a good relationship to my sexuality and be able to teach my daughter different things about her sexuality, so she's not learning about sex from maybe her boyfriend, of how her body is, or how, men are just so obsessed with porn these days. And that's where they learn about pleasing a woman and all of these different things. I want her to be educated, and I want her to have a conscious relationship to sex. And that's what sacred sexuality is, bringing consciousness, bringing spirituality to the sacred act of lovemaking, the sacred act of exploring your body, because it is a vessel. It is a vessel for the divine. It is a vessel. It is a temple for your soul in this world. And that's why I love the tantric path, because it doesn't see the body as not spiritual. It sees it as the living embodiment of you. It's not just consciousness. It's not just masculine consciousness of up and out and just being ascetic and not living in this world. It's very much of how can we ground spiritual practices into your body? How can we ground spiritual practices into the everyday life? And so that's why being a tantrika just really resonates with me. And I believe that I'm still very early in my journey, and I'm getting little bits and pieces here. And I don't claim to be, like, I don't know, an expert in it, but I do love the way of life. I do love the philosophy. I do love the meditation. I do love the different tools, working with different yantras, different breathwork practices and mantras and all of these different things. And it's just become this beautiful amalgamation of different tools that I've learned from different teachers. And what does my own spiritual practice look like as I connect to the energy inside of me, as I connect to Shakti inside of me, and what awakens Shakti, and feeling more alive, feeling more connected, feeling more in my truth, feeling more unafraid to share and have that rawest expression. And, I think it was one of the best gifts that I had given myself of being able to do this training, because I really truly felt that I had this opportunity to connect to what is sexuality and go back to the innocence and curiosity of being sexually curious of bodies, and not think of being it as shameful or taboo, but looking at how can I bring spirituality into something that is so taboo, and really think about merging the holy and the wild, spirit and sex, and seeing what that looks like for me in my day-to-day practices. And so I feel like that is just what is really turning me on right now. And I've made the decision to also take on contract work. I was doing it part-time, but I've decided to take an assignment that is full-time. And, it's like I preach so much about the way of a tantrika and what it's like to be in this world, what it's like to ground that energy. But I still felt that there was a separation, that if I wanted to be on the spiritual path, I, didn't want to live in the matrix and all. And then I have so much perspective on that, so much perspective on that. And I thought I was holier than thou. I thought that I didn't want to be in that world. I was really exhausted. I was really tired. I was really burnt out. And I just looked down on people that were in the matrix, that were in corporate jobs. And I just thought, oh my gosh, you are soulless. You're working for the man, blah, blah, blah. And, being out of it for over 2 years, it's, oh, okay. Like I realized just how much we need to bring more conscious folks into that realm. And I am actually going to turn on the light here because it is so dark. So we're going to take a brief pause. Okay, there, more light, more light. Okay. Let's see, I think I can turn off my, is that good? No, let's see. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay. And so it's really about thinking, actually, no, I don't like that light. I feel like I'm on a live with you all. Kind of wish it was. I'm not gonna lie. I've realized I've started doing more lives on Instagram, and I just really love being live with people. So we'll see how long I do these podcast episodes for that are recorded. Okay. Okay. I actually don't like the lighting. Gross. Okay, anyway, we're just gonna turn it off. But the thing about that is I used to really think, oh my goodness, people in corporate, that's so lame. Everyone should just be a spiritual entrepreneur living in Bali and, just making money doing that and all that stuff. And I guess it was kind of like my experience of being on a mountain, being so far removed from the day-to-day life of what normal people actually go through. And I find that, this message of living spiritually in the world is so important. And I'm so grateful for all the clients that I've had where they've had full-time jobs, where maybe they were trying to start up a business, maybe they were, like a mom and just seeing what everyday life looks like for some people, being in meetings, back-to-back Zoom meetings, whether they're commuting, having Slack messages go off, having to drop off kids at, school in the morning, or not having childcare. And I just feel like because I'm in a space where I get to experience those things again, I just have more compassion, more empathy, and it's really letting a fire up my ass to think, okay, you call yourself a tantrika, you call yourself spiritual. This is like where rubber meets the road, and see how your practices can really be integrated in your day-to-day life, where you can see literally divine in everything, not just you being at home, not just you going to Loom for 5 weeks. Like, no, this is the real juice. This is the real stuff. We need to bring you out in the world. And it's so interesting because, and by the way, yeah, I'm going to put a shout out for this. I am now teaching in-person Kundalini yoga classes on Sundays in Palo Alto at Inner Seed. And so you can go to, I will link it here in my show notes. So come to my class. Super excited. But, because I'm in the Bay Area, because, predominantly the industry here in the Bay Area is full of tech people, and they're working on things that are revolutionizing and changing the way that we operate in the real world. Hello, AI, and all of the fear mongering around that of what's happening to people's jobs. But it's like we are becoming so disconnected to the heart. And that's what we need to bring into all of this new technology that's coming out into the world, is like, how do we retain that sense of humanity? How do we retain that sense of heart into the products that we're making, into the products that are interacting with people on a day-to-day basis, creating that intimacy, creating, yeah. And so it's just, all of these questions are just circulating in my head. And, when I see this opportunity to meet in person, to be in the space, it allows me to think, oh, okay, we need to harmonize our mind, body, and spirit and soul. Physical body, mental body, spiritual body, like all of it. And what does it look like for me in my own practices? And not every day is perfect. I don't have the freedom to meditate hours on end, or do different types of spiritual practices, because now it's being eaten up by commuting time or meeting times. And so it's just an opportunity to look at it. And my intention for the new moon, because it's a new moon in Taurus and it's ruled by Venus, which is sensuality, beauty, and love, is really learning how to savor into each moment, whether it's challenging, whether it's easy or not, whether it's very easy to savor into a self-pleasure practice because it's pleasurable, right? But how can we see that those challenges, those opportunities of growth can also be a pleasurable practice? How can we expand our capacity? How can we expand our nervous system to gracefully allow that pain to be transformed into peace? And so even though I'm in a really challenging moment, even though I have no idea, like, I just feel like a lot of things are up in the air. I feel like there are so many things that I can't control in a sense, but I'm also giving little bits and pieces here and there. I'm not going to try and pretend that I know what to do, or I know how, these the new tantric feminine arts and practices that I've learned are going to show up in my own coaching business. And just because I'm, stepping into something full time doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to stop my business, that I'm going to stop coaching, because I love spirituality. I love diving into the feminine. I love the tantric arts. Like, I can talk about Shakti and Tantra and like Kundalini yoga all day long, personal development, spiritual development, women's empowerment. Like, ugh, I have a mic right now. So that's why I'm here on this podcast and I'm talking about it. But really allowing the space to come through of what does that look like? And so for me, the only thing that I know that I'm sure of is, okay, I'm teaching Kundalini yoga every Sunday, and I'm going to bring some of those practices there. Am I going to set a schedule for these podcast episodes? No, because I want it to be spacious. And that was one of the things that I really like. Diving into feminine practices embodiment means listening to the things that light me up and turn me on, right? Instead of doing the shoulds, and just really allowing that flow to come through. And I remember just speaking to one of my mentors and telling her, as I dive into the Venusian arts, I really need a space to express myself without the need for a certain outcome. Just the pureness of expression. That is it. Just pure fun, just pleasure. And so that's what it's going to be. It's like when I feel inspired, I am going to share. I'm going to share, I'm going to hop on the mic, I'm going to release a podcast, all of those different things. And for now, I am okay with it. I feel good about it and just enjoy life. Because for as long as I remember, I have always been on this journey of having goals and wanting to make something of myself, like having to prove my fucking worth. And it's just very exhausting. It's very exhausting. And I've done that since I was very little. And I took a lot of pride in my accomplishments and jobs that I had, trying to make it, and it's just like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to take a breather. I just want to have stupid hobbies. And I still want to share my spiritual teachings. I want to talk about my process of really integrating, feminine embodiment into my life, studying Tantra, having a relationship to Shakti, worshiping Shakti, and teaching yoga and like doing the things that really light me up. And it's been such a journey of, okay, getting this degree, getting that degree, getting this accomplishment, wanting to make a certain amount of money. And everything I did on the weekends was always even a certification, in the coaching aspect. And it just feels really good to take a breather. It feels really good to just express and not have a certain goal. It feels really good to just share this and be real and honest and not feel like, oh, okay, I want to monetize this. And I'm okay with not knowing. I'm okay with not knowing, and I'm okay with this integration process. I'm okay with experiencing. I'm learning to savor in the experience that I'm having in this moment. I'm learning to savor in the not knowing. I'm learning to savor in my authenticity. I'm learning to savor in the sound of my voice. I'm learning to savor in being uninhibited. I'm learning to savor into having fun. I'm learning to savor in my pleasure. And so I feel really complete. I feel like this episode just took you in a whole whirlwind. But that is the latest and greatest for me. Thank you for listening. Drop me a note. Send me a DM on Instagram at Sacred Femme Alchemy. And would love to hear from you. Thank you for being on this journey with me. Thank you for witnessing me. And no hate here, okay? I'm not even going to entertain that. And if you're just like, okay, this is a direction that I don't want to follow her in, then don't follow me. Don't. but I'm here for it. I'm excited to see what it's like to dive into these practices and really have that initiation and next chapter of application, experiential learning, walking my path, and talking the talk or walking the talk. But it feels really beautiful, feels really honest, feels really fucking honest in a world where there's a lot of dishonesty. Feels genuine and sincere from my heart. And so it just feels really good. Thank you for witnessing me. Thank you for being here. And thank you for listening. All right, folks. Sat Nam. Until next time.